A major issue that Asian and Pacific Island Americans have faced is the categorization of their groups. Traditionally, Asians are categorized by their specific ethnicity, and Pacific Island Americans feel the same. In the 1990s, Hawaiians wanted to be grouped with Native Americans. The discrimination against Asian and Pacific Island immigrants, dating back to 1865, passing of the Chinese Exclusion Act. The act was a U.S. law that imposed strict limitations on immigration and restricted all Chinese immigrant laborers from coming to the U.S. This legislation allowed for many discriminatory laws, such as California's limitations on protections Chinese could have. In Yig v. Hopkins, the court found that the law in San Francisco closing wooden laundry buildings were to be closed violated the Fourth Amendment. Not only were they discriminated against, the court in 1922 ruled that since Asian and Pacific Island Americans were not white, they were not entitled to full citizenship rights. Then in 1941, Pearl Harbor was bombed, and in turn, Japanese Americans were put into the internment camps by Executive Order 9066 from President Franklin D. Roosevelt. In the Korematsu v. United States case in 1944, the court case argued the constitutionality of Executive Order 9066. Fred Korematsu attempted to evade his internment, challenging that the internment infringed upon his Fifth Amendment right of due process. However, the Supreme Court sided with the government and determined that it was constitutional. The court applied the strict scrutiny standard to racial discrimination and declared that the threat of espionage took precedence over the individual rights of Korematsu. The government knowingly presented false statements and information to the Supreme Court that affected its decision. Chinese were then extended the right to apply for full citizenship. Philip Vera Cruz was a Filipino-American labor leader, farm worker, and leader in the Asian American civil rights movement. He was a co-founder of the Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee, which later merged with the National Farm Workers Association to become the United Farm Workers. As the union's longtime vice president, he worked to improve the working conditions for migrant workers. Philip Vera Cruz led the Delano grape strike. His strike brought together several National Farm Labor Union organizers, including Vera Cruz, Larry Italiong, Benjamin Gines, and Pete Velasco. As a result of his strike, they decided that both unions would strike against the grape growers, an action which eventually led to both unions joining to become the United Farm Workers. The Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance is a nonprofit organization of Asian Pacific American trade union members. It was the first and only national organization for Asian Pacific American union members. The Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance was founded on May 1st, 1992, when 500 Asian Pacific American labor activists met to found a new national labor organization to give Asian and Pacific Island workers a more effective voice within the AFL-CIO and on labor issues nationally. APALA's first president was Kent Wong.
Asian Americans and Pacific Island Americans still face discriminatory and racial issues today. There has been the myth that all Asian Americans are economically successful. Due to this myth, many Asian Americans in need are denied access to public assistance programs and public financial programs. On the other hand, Asian Americans are often excluded from executive positions in the workplace or passed over for promotions because of stereotypes such as having poor leadership potential and charisma or creativity. As mentioned earlier, Asian Americans are often seen as politically apathetic due to the expectation that they are quiet and accepting. Likewise, there are fewer policies in place to protect the rights of Asian Americans than other minorities. Because Asian Americans are relatively recent immigrants, they are less politically established with fewer role models in office. Many Asian Americans don't speak English well enough to feel comfortable to exercise their right to vote, hence the push for more multilingual ballots in English language classes. Asian Americans are far less represented in state and federal government than in proportion to their population. Many Asian Americans feel helpless to change the system because the community is so diverse, it is hard to organize politically. Pacific Islanders are typically discriminated against due to stereotypes that they are not as intelligent as others. This leads them to be stuck in many blue-collar jobs in Hawaii, such as construction. Similar to Asians, many Pacific Islanders are poorly represented within the government, limiting their voice in politics.